It's your intellect once again. So this is our revision for advanced level history. That is our June 2020 question number 5, which is dealing with the causes of the French Revolution. Saka todaita bepa ramakaona kuti this is June 2020 aneka question paper redu reeuropean. Saka question yakauya ichiti zvoni number 5 zvikanzi to what extent did the rigid class system in France led to the outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789. Zimsec dzimwe nguva inouya yakanyora about 1788 depending na scholar, vamwe vanoti 1788 vamwe 1789. Usazomhanye handika madhetsi mamwe chete, right? Saka panapa question yedu iyi kana ukanzwa vati rigid class system handika yakakonzeresa sei French Revolution, yakangofanana nequestion inoti a revolt against privileges. Equation 1 was the privileged system ndo yaibuditsa a rigid social class system. Andika saka tiri ipapo ndoda kuti munyore muchiti mime the question demands candidates to review that the privileged system in France contributed more to the outbreak of the French Revolution. Right. However, good candidates cannot forget the impact of other factors which have contributed to the outbreak of the French Revolution. Such as the American War of Independence, incompetent government, among other factors. Right. Saka tiri ipapo toda kudefine the term privileged system or kudefine a term rigid class system kuti chi. Saka chinonzi privileged system chi. Saka mobva mati mimi these were political, social, and economic. These were political, social, and economic advantages enjoyed by the first and second state. But resented to the third estate. Saka tukuti chinonzi rigid class system, it is a situation whereby individuals are grouped into several positions in the state, whereby we could have the first state, the second state, and the third state, which can also be called the privileged system. Saka tiri ipapo, we want to mention what are political privileges. Saka munhu akangwara in this question, the impact of social rigid system. When explaining the impact of the social rigid system, good candidates were supposed to group the rigid class system in accordance to the privileges avaiwana. Because kana chiti rigid class system turikuti kunyaya yekuti vamwe ndeve first state, vamwe ndeve second state, vamwe ndeve third state, andika privileged system. Saka turikutaura kuti nemamwe mashoko kakuita ikako kakakonzeresa kuti pave nerevolution. Tuirira. Saka tiri ipapo taakuya panapa taakutsvaga political privileges. What are the political privileges? Panapa mobva maisa uku kumobva mati this was a monopoly. This was a monopoly in politics, cannot in highest political position. A monopoly in highest political position. A monopoly in highest political position, comma, highest military ranks, and other judicial services. Judicial and church positions. A monopoly in highest political ranks, highest military ranks, highest church ranks, and judicial services. Kwese ikoko kwairambidzwa vanhu kuenda. So these were privileges that were enjoyed by the first state. Tabva ipapo tinoenda pa social privileges. Social privileges. We have social privileges. Saka kuma social privileges, it included arbitrary arrest. It included arbitrary arrest. Chichimwe chinopinda ipapo. Hunting rights. What else? Forced labor and freedom of expression. Forced labor and freedom of expression. This is what is included in the social privileges. Right. Saka panapa, alright, kuti tataura nyaya forced labor. Tikataura nyaya futi arbitrary arrest. Tikataura nyaya hunting freedom of expression. Mapoints esai achanga achikubatsira kubuditsa kuti how rigid class system in terms of social issues have managed kukonzeresa revolution. Right. Then touya panapa pama economic privileges. But these included taxation. We have issues like taxation, tithe payment, was we were forced to pay tithe yaiva high, and forced labor. Sorry. A greater share of land. A greater share of land. Then you know go to political positions, military, church positions. Chichi mwanjandata ora judicial system. So saka kana wadai wapedza kuburitsa zvinhu pachena, then auye vhawo wakuexplaina zvinhu. So ndoda kukubatsira chinhu one munhu. Hapana Zimsec painoseta question sezvayakaita izvo. Yobva yashaya answer yacho. Iwe wobva wafungidzira kuti saka apa ndicharamba. Sezvamunoita vamwenyu kuti mune pfungwa dzekuti kana kuti munonyeperwa kunzi hanzi unokwanisa kuramba unomakirwa but maki yako haipinde mubhendi A. Bhendi number 1 ndere 22 to 25 marks, tozobvawo 18 to 20 chidzika. Saka kuti upinde muma-highest bands ema-marks, you need to evaluate kuziva zvese zvikudiwa nequestion. Anoona kuti number 1 we have defined tazvirerutsira, even ukada kutonyora uchiti rigid class system, you could express kuti the rigid class system is divided into ma-issues whereby there is political obvious hapana pauchatozvitaura usingataure ma-privilege. So in the rigid class system there were, in terms of politics kune zvaitika, kusocial kune zvaitika, kuchi kune zvaitika. Saka chinoita kuti uexpand ma-points kugona kuma-bracketa. Even when you are writing Napoleon, even when you are writing the Jacobins, even kupi nekupi, you must have the ability yekuziva kuti idzi ndo politics, izvi ndo social, izvi ndo ma-economic, kuti ukwanise kunzwisa history. Ndosaka uchiona kuti ma-points ukada kungomanyora usina kuagrupa, usina kutanga waita order kudai, unoremerwa nechikoro, unoona kunge chikoro chakaoma stereka. Saka tiri ipapo, in your introduction number 1 you must have to include kuti rigid class system was a system whereby in France we got 3 estates, that is the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. And these estates, they enjoyed different privileges, whereas the first estate and the second estate, they enjoyed political, social, and economic privileges. But these privileges were resented to the third estate. And this has sparked the revolution. But without also not forgetting the impetus of other issues which have attributed to the outbreak of the French Revolution. Saka tiri ipapo takubata panapa pakutewa explainer. Initially, in terms of the political privileges in France, there was the monopoly of political positions, whereby one was born a king, and no one was allowed to vote for a king or to vote for a president. The system of government which was in France was the ancient regime. It means that those who were born in the second estate and in the third estate, they never tested the goodness of the political issues in France. Why? Because it was resented to them. But however, according to Dennis Richards, he stipulated that men are born free, but everywhere are in chains. It means that individuals, they were complaining that political possession should not be by birthright, but individuals must exercise political participation. So as individuals, they were revolting for political participation. This has sparked the outbreak of the French Revolution. And toya apa pama military positions, for one to earn, to be called or to earn a top military rank in France, you must have to be born with the individuals of the first estate or second estate. For example, the nobility of the robes and the nobility of the swords. It means that military positions were granted by birth, not by qualification. But as a result, this was against the philosophical ideas which were stipulating the separation of powers, as according to Montesquieu. And as a result, as individuals were incited that it was wrong for military position to be by birth, they started to revolt for a new government which could grant them a fair measure in terms of military issues. And the revolution broke out. And azvimbode musimba watopedza church top military in terms of the church position, for one to be an archbishop, for one to be a priest, you must have to be born to be born with the individuals who were part and parcel of the first estate or the second estate, of which it was something which was wrong. Why? Because the church positions are awarded by vote and by competence, whereby one should have studied to be a bishop. But in this case, bishops, they born bishops. Yet it's something which is not which was not fair. Why? Because these church positions aifana kunge ari open to everyone. Toenda pama-judicial system, the judicial system was corrupt. It was corrupt in a sense that it was, in terms of judicial system, only those with the highest political position were enjoyed to be my judges. They enjoy to be my prosecutors. Whereas everyone in the society, especially within the second state or amongst the third class, there were other individuals who were learned among the bourgeoisie, who could have my positions but they were not given that opportunity. Why? Because the government was corrupt, and at the same time the government wanted to initiate its own interest at the expense of its citizens. And zvakaleadera revolution. Tatopedza to explain 4 more points. You only go sinakana 1. Then to up kuma social privileges. There was the introduction of forced labor, where the members of the third state, they were being forced to work within the safes of the first state and the second state. And at the same time, according to David Thompson, he could stipulate that forced labor was one of the major impacts which have attributed to the outbreak of the French Revolution, because people were complaining to work for nothing. Above all, there was arbitrary arrest, whereas in France, individuals, they were revolting for liberty, fraternity, and equality. Yet individuals, they were sued, but they were not tried in court. They were not allowed to have representatives to represent them if they are guilty or not guilty. By so doing, according to H.O. Peacock, because liberty, fraternity, and equality was breed, people, they were now revolting for a change of government. And then tiripapo tuenda panyaye hunting. Andizoka tripa hunting ipapo tukutaura nyaya kuti susu individuals, they were not allowed to hunt as long as we are not part and parcel of the first state or the second state. Hunting was a traditional sport which was entitled for the first state. And this made the revolution to be possible among the French citizens. Why? Because at a time when in France, individuals, they were not allowed to hunt, they were not allowed to fish. It means that their rights were being, they were not granted their full equal rights. They did not have equality. By so doing, they wanted a change in the government, whereas government in our power, freedom of expression, right to express themselves normally in the society. Then kuma economic privileges, we have got the issue of taxation. There was now unfair taxation whereby the members who were lowly paid, they were also highly taxed. And so as a result, this made them to throw spanners in the road of the in the path of the reforms. Why? Because they wanted a change in government where they could revolt, if taxation was to be paid, every member must also pay that same amount of taxation. Or if we are saying taxation is not paid, everyone must not pay tax. But now it was a heavy burden to the members of the third states, according to H.O. Peacock, and they decided to thwart this government because it was unfair upon them. Then to end up a tithe payment. Tithe payment was mandatory, and it was highly fixed upon the members of the third state, such that the priests, the bishops, and the archbishop could enjoy. And as a result, it was unfair because the members who were paying tithe were those who were lowly paid. And at the same time, the members of the first state who were supposed to pay more tithe to the church, they were not paying tithe. Rather, they enjoyed the tithe of the third class. Yet it was unfair. Why? Because biblical, or in terms of the Roman Catholic law, tithe payment has no resentment of which class do you belong. it is a law which was biblically implied, but yet now in France, it was now a corruptive motive for the benefit of the first state. As a result, individuals, they wanted a new type of government which could understand that tithe payment must not by force, or it must not by estate, but through biblical implications. Saka government haifana kubai. Toenda panyaya greater share of land. According to HL Peacock, there are about 13 million individuals, and they owned about 1/3 of land in France, which was unfair. The members of the first state and the second state, they were very few as compared to the members of the of Mama. So as a result, they expected them having a large number, having a greater share of land. Andikona saka zvakabva zvazoita kuti ava va revolt. Why? Because vanga vasina land yakaita sei yakakwana. Ndo ma points ma explainer why it why. Ameno kana mune mubvunzo. Hello. Right. Saka tiri papo ndo patakuzo explainer other causes. Pama other causes apa hazvo zvapusa ndo patakutozo explainer mapoints akafanana ne American War of Independence. How did the American War of Independence have attributed to the outbreak of the French Revolution? We could explain the impact whereby we could have individuals like General Lafayette. He was one of the members who participated in the American War of Independence. So as they were within the war, they've observed how liberty, fraternity, and equality was implemented upon the citizens in the American soil. By so doing, they were inspired by the experience, as according to H.O. Peacock. They were inspired to an extent that they see how a common man was enjoying freedom, while least those who had the highest ranks in the military possessed, there were other privileges there in which they could not enjoy in France. As a result, they came back and they incited the majority about how bad the government was, and this sparked the revolution. Obabata noti vanhu vanga vaudzwa kuti vamwe vari kuenjoya liberty, fraternity, equality kuBritain, kuivo kuAmerica yet kuFrance kwacho even ivo members of the nobility, the members of the some of the royalties vava nemamwe maprivileges avaita sei avavasina. Then tiri papo you could even explain about poor harvest. The poor harvest have attributed to the outbreak of the French Revolution in the sense that when hunger and starvation sparked within the countryside of the French districts, it made the road to urban migration. As there was a road to urban migration, it led to the manifestation of the Paris mobs. And the Paris mobs, these were violent individuals who even made to the manifestation of other political clubs in France who even overthrew the French government. Why? One hungry man is much more deadly than 100 lions, as according to Dennis Richards. So as they were hungry, they started to develop a hostile behavior to an extent that they wanted even to execute the king. And panapa ukada kwenda pa na incompetent king. France was beheaded by an incompetent king. Louis XVI was an incompetent king. Why? He failed to hold the pressure of his wife and the court nobles. And at the same time, he failed to handle other political social issues he could have addressed. For example, if he was a competent king, he should have addressed the issue of poor harvest by other implementations. But he failed to find any way how could he have addressed the issue of hunger in France. How could he address the issue of unemployment in France? And this has sparked the revolution. Why? It proved that he was incompetent for the position. Why? The citizens were suffering upon his side. So it was not worthy for him to maintain the position. right. Then ane zvimwe zvakawanda makutoexplaina ana taxation anachi ndizvo hameno kana mune mubvunzo ndo zvaiitwa question saka